Well, hello everybody, and good afternoon. Yes, it is afternoon. I had to check my phone then. Is it afternoon? Yes, it is 12:30. I'm so excited to be back here. So if you haven't seen any of the posts that I put out last week, this is episode 1 of series 6. I can't even believe I'm saying that. For a podcast where I was only ever going to record one series of 10 episodes, and it was going to be that job done, no more. And then I got all excited because I love chatting to people about NLP. And so here we are. I think this might be episode 53 or something like that. But most certainly series 6, that's for sure. If you are watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching this in the Facebook group as a video, then congratulations, because you're here for what we call the pre-release. So this is where I will be interviewing our lovely guest, who I'll introduce shortly. And so if you're here live watching the video, you are on the inside. You are in the know, because you're going to see exactly what Sian and I say. Now, this is designed, as you'll know if you're a follower of the podcast, to be kind of like what I call a fireside chat. So we're just going to chat and be real, and that might mean that we make mistakes, and it might be that we trip up, and that's all of what makes it real in terms of how we record these podcasts. So what will happen after today is I send off the recording to the podcast editor. He does all his little funky stuff with it for me, and then sends it back, and then we'll do the official release in a few weeks' time. So if you are here, you are on the inside, because you're here with us. So do say hello if you're watching. Put your name on it, because we won't be able to see who it is because of the streaming platform that we're using. But thank you so much for joining us, those of you that are here with us live. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest, series 6, episode 1. I feel like I need a drum roll. Is the lovely Sian Fisher. Good afternoon, Sian. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
Oh,
how are you?
I'm good. I'm
looking
good.
Lovely in your red.
Well, funny enough, this is part of the podcast today. So Sian, just for the benefit of people that are watching live, could I just get you to, just in a few lines, kind of introduce yourself, just tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll get going properly with the podcast.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I'm Sian Fisher, and I'm a personal stylist, and I help you look and feel your best and feel amazing every single day.
You certainly do.
Sure.
Certainly do. I love it. Cool. So without further ado, we're going to get going with the actual recording of the podcast episode, which is always really exciting. And if you're watching this live and can see me, and you've followed me on social media for some time, you'll know I've been through my own personal transformation. So here's the inside scoop. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my personal stylist, who has helped me to recreate my style. And this is all going to come out in the podcast episode. So anyway, I'm not going to give too much away, but I just thought I'd say that before we start. But Sian's going to talk a little bit about her NLP journey. And then, of course, we're going to talk about personal styling and the difference that this has made for Sian in her business, which I'm so excited about. So, Sian, let's get going. So, because I ask you to cast your mind back to what start again, Laurie. See, this is why I said it's all real, people. Cast your mind back to what life was like for you before NLP. So feel free to give us a little bit of a background, and then talk us a little bit about what was life like for you back then.
Yeah, okay. So going back, so I've run my own business for 3 years. Before that, I was employed. I've got a 20+ year HR career, and I was very much on the hamster wheel. So I had a very defined version of success that I don't necessarily think is my version of success now. In fact, it's not. But I was on that hamster wheel. It was the next promotion, the next job, the next step up. And it was very much a case of, with all of that, I used to burn myself out. So I went through this cycle. And I looking back now, I can absolutely see it. You could almost pinpoint when I was going to get to a burnout point. You could predict it. And so that was how life was. Come the end of 2018, I had some opportunities come my way that meant that I could actually get off the hamster wheel. I didn't mind being employed. It has lots of benefits, but what I've noticed since is that I really like being my own boss. And I think I'd struggle to go back now. But I set my business up, and to start
And
with,
this is
I
your
could
personal
see,
styling business, yeah?
yeah. And to start with, I could see little bits of those old patterns, because I wanted it to be a success. But I hadn't really at that point defined what success was for me and what that looked like. It was just kind of taking the old version and applying it to the fact that I was now in charge. But one of the things that I committed to for a long time when I was employed, I would do a training course because there was a new piece of employment legislation coming out, or there was a new system that we were using or something like that. But there was never any real kind of development investment in me. And that was one of the things that I committed to when I set the business up, was that I would make the time and the space and make the investment into my own development. And I've really lived that.
So just kind of before we get too far into that, you mentioned there, you thought you had a definition of success that wasn't yours. And I think that's a really interesting point, because I think so many of us think we know what success looks like, and actually, is it our definition, or is it a definition we've been given from elsewhere? I'd just love you to expand on that a little bit more. Like, what was this definition of success which you actually came to realize wasn't your own?
It was the career path, I think. So, and I don't necessarily know where it came from. I think there were probably influences from school, from family, etc., and not bad influences. But I had built this idea that success was a successful career. So that meant I went to university, did my degree, went straight into a graduate program with M&S, and then each move that I made was very much, it's another step up, it's more money, it's a better job title. And that's kind of where I got to. So I was doing really well in terms of position, in terms of the title and the money, and that was all great. But I wasn't feeling fulfilled from it. It was very much a case of, this is what I think I should be doing. I was on this career path. I'd chosen HR, and I did love HR, and I still do. And I think, I've got a really good network of good HR people that are fantastic, and it's great. But it was just, that was kind of my predefined version of success that I thought I had to follow.
So there's the expectation that there's only one way. You climb the corporate ladder, you work really, really hard, you do long hours, and if you put all of that effort in, success will come to you, right? And I was the same. I think a lot of people listening to the podcast will be, like, this is something that is kind of almost bred into us as we come through the corporate world, which is, if you work hard, you're going to get rewarded. And the downside to that is burnout. And being unfulfilled. I think that was a really interesting point that you raised there about coming to realize that actually, as hard as you were working, you didn't feel fulfilled. I don't know about you, but for me, that was almost like a sense of emptiness, a sense of, I'm working really hard, but there's just some emptiness, there's some hole in here that I'm not fulfilling, and it's not bringing me as much joy. I'm going through the motions. It's that kind of feeling. Was that the same for you?
Definitely. And I think it was just that I was getting that constant feeling of, I'm working really hard, I'm putting all this effort in. And yes, if you looked at my career, it was going in the right direction. But the actual day-to-day in the job, it was just like brick wall after brick wall, it felt like you were fighting a constant losing battle.
Yeah. And then you had the opportunity to set up your own business. So before we go into kind of the NLP courses that you did, I'm guessing, like, is styling something that's always been in you, or is this something that just an opportunity presented itself and you went, oh, styling, or maybe I could look at that? Like how did that happen?
So I became a stylist's client in 2010. I was coming to the end of a 2-year weight loss journey, getting very close to my target weight, and didn't have a clue because I'd always been big. I'd never known anything else. And actually, clothes up until that point, wasn't something that interested me. It was just, they were more of a way of, how do I hide it? How do I cover it up? And I got to this point of, actually, I've got to replace my whole wardrobe now. Nothing fits. And I've done all this hard work. So how am I going to make sure that I actually look good and show it off? And a colleague of mine at the time who had been through, she'd worked with a stylist, she said, you really need to go and do this. So off I went with another colleague who is one of my best friends. And we went together, went through kind of the sessions and gaining all the knowledge. And it clicked. It felt right for me. It clicked. It made sense. I started actually really enjoying shopping for clothes, deciding what to wear, putting outfits together. And so it was actually that friend that I went with who, when I had the opportunity to employment and set up on myself, it was her that kind of said, have you thought about, because I think you'd be brilliant. And I was like, well, yeah, I did a little while ago. But thank you for putting it back on my radar, because, yeah, and as soon as she planted that seed, that was it. It grew and grew from there. So I got myself on, I contacted House of Colour, which is the system and the company that I work with. Got myself on their discovery day, got myself, on their training, and I haven't looked since. I love everything about it.
So you've kind of had a very successful HR career. You've then had an opportunity to fulfill something that you clearly are passionate about, and I know how passionate you are about helping women to look and feel amazing, because I am one of your clients. And I'm just wondering, like, at that moment when you're setting up this business, you find something that you're passionate about. You find something that clearly you have a huge talent for, which I can say, and I know you wouldn't because you're so modest, but you have a massive talent for this. And something that you love doing. So the doing of the doing, if I can call it that, the actual consulting and styling you absolutely love, but you then find yourself running a business, but your mindset still has a lot of baggage, and your mindset still has all of these unhelpful thought processes. Just before we start talking about the difference NLP made for you, could you just give us an appreciation for, like, what was some of those unhelpful thought patterns that you had while you were trying to run your business, something you're clearly passionate about, but yet not really being able to maximize your ability to run that as a business because you were holding yourself back?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones was my fear of getting now. But it was like, just I'd always looked at a photo of myself and thought, nah, that's not good enough, or I don't like the way that I'm looking in that, or, which is really, it's counterintuitive, isn't it, for a personal stylist to go, I'm not going to get in front of the camera. And it wasn't about how I'd styled myself or what I was wearing. It was that kind of, from childhood, I've never liked photos of myself. So that was a really big mindset issue that I had to get over. Completely different now. More than happy, there are still the odd ones where, you think, but I think we all get that. But on the whole, that's not an issue for me now at all. I also had this kind of I don't know where it came from, but I had this mindset of I have to follow somebody else's way of doing things. And I think that's probably partly from such a long HR career, you know. Unfortunately, it can be seen as a very process driven field. And I think there was an element of that, you know, okay, so a personal stylist has to present themselves in this way and talk about these things and in talk about them in this way. And I feel authentic. And that's one of the things that I talk about, you know, in terms of your style, it needs to be an authentic representation of you. But that kind of path that I felt I had to follow just didn't feel authentic to me in the way that I wanted to do things. But I couldn't see how to do it differently. Or just, well, what if I do this and it goes wrong? Or what if I do this and it fails? You know, there was a real kind of fear of failure. And I think because there was so much invested, you know, I now run my own business. I'm dependent on myself for my income as well. You know, I'm not going to get that regular paycheck anymore. So I had all these what if things and a real fear of failure.
Yeah, very common, very common. Cool. I don't know if it's my internet or yours.
Lots of things that were getting in my way.
Yeah. Yes, no, absolutely. I don't know if it's my internet or your internet, but it's playing up a little bit. Can you hear me okay? Hello, are you still there?
Hello, I'm back. I don't know what happened there.
That's all right. I think we got most of it. Your picture's gone a bit grainy, so there must be a lot of people using that internet where you are today. But I think it's settling down a bit now.
Actually not. Good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good. So let's move on then and let's talk about. So you set the business up in 2019 and you had this kind of realization that actually you were holding yourself back, and that you wanted to make the time and space to actually invest in yourself, and you saw setting up your business as this golden opportunity to have the time and the money to be able to invest in yourself. So tell us a little bit then about what happened after that.
So I met you at a networking event where I was actually the speaker talking about style. But we got chatting, and one of the things that I'd always kind of had in the back of my mind was that I'd like to do some sort of training or qualification in coaching. I think probably to do with my HR background. And we got chatting, and I thought, brilliant, I'm signing up. I was kind of decided by the time we'd finished. I didn't actually really know what NLP coaching was. I have to be honest. So, you know, I just came open-minded onto the prac course. And at the time there was a lot going on. So I decided I'd signed up, I'd paid for it, I'd done all my pre-course study. And a couple of weeks before I was due to start, found out I was pregnant. So this is about 6 months in to setting up the business. Really fantastic, but kind of a curveball that I was coping with. Had a couple of not major scares, but a couple of scares there as well. So that's actually what caused me to delay doing my coach training. But I did my prac training. But with that kind of everything going on around me, the stuff that I actually really took away from prac was some of the stuff around how can I use this with Emily, who I now know is Emily, didn't know at the time. But how can I use this, you know, when I become a mum, to really give her a good grounding? So I remember, I really remember you talking about the example of Bruce with, I think it was his daughter, and how he used to anchor a positive emotion by touching her nose every time she smiled, and holding it there. So I did that with Emily. You know, every time she smiled, finger on nose, hold it there. and release it when she finished. So every time she started to get a bit grizzly or grumbly, or you could see that was coming, touch of the nose, and we had giggles and smiles, and it was all sort of, it was fantastic. It was really, really amazing.
It's such a brilliant little tool, that, honestly. It's one of the basic
really
anchoring things, but with little kiddies, it works brilliantly.
Yeah, it does. And I was doing that. I'm trying to think how old she was. She was probably 4 or 5 months, where we were really having good smiles. And I, I don't tend to do it now because she's too much of a wriggly worm, and so actually trying to get hold of her nose is a bit difficult. But she's not too bad. But yeah, it really, in those months where we were in, because of course this was early 2020, so she's a lockdown baby. We were restricted in who we could see. That made a huge difference for me, kind of as a new first-time mum, with limited physical support around me. I had a really good network on Zoom and FaceTime and everything. But that made a huge difference. And then as she's got older, things like the language. So the other really clear example I remember from practice training was, instead of "don't run across the road," it's "stay here." Things like that. So I was really conscious as well, and I still am, although it's more intuitive now, but really conscious of the language that I was choosing to use with her. So positive enforcement rather than the negative. And that's made a huge difference. And she absolutely, you tell her to stay here and she stays here, on the whole. We're in terrible twos at the moment. She's not that terrible. But on the whole, she does it. Yeah.
And again, I think this is some of the stuff, this is some of the golden nuggets that people get from the prac course. Like, you didn't come to get parenting skills, and I'm certainly not a parent, and certainly not able to give you that kind of support. But actually, it's those little nuggets that people walk away with, and they go, "Oh, I didn't come for this, but actually, I'm so glad I've learned this, because actually, what a difference." So just for those of you listening to the podcast that maybe aren't familiar with some of the language things, just to very quickly cover off. So what we say is, when we're talking to anyone, children are very susceptible, but as are adults. When you say to the child, "don't run across the road," the unconscious mind can't process the negative. It can't process the not. So you might as well say to the child, "run across the road." No parent's going to do that. But at an unconscious level, that's how it's processed when you say "don't run across the road." So I always teach everyone on the practitioner course, you really should use what we call positive directionalized language. Now, it's a very posh way of saying, just say it the way you want it. So if you want your child to stay with you as you're walking down the pavement by the road, say to the child, "stay here with me," because that's actually what you want the child to do. Rather than going through life telling everybody else what you don't want them to do, how about tell them what you do want them to do? And so this is one of the many little nuggets which I share on the practitioner course, and it just makes such a difference, so Sian, doesn't it? If you, as a parent, if you can start being more mindful of your language, it really helps your child and helps your relationship with your child, and also helps you get what you need from them when they're that small.
Yeah, definitely. Such a huge difference. And I mean, that was prac for me, and I delayed coach because of just where things were, kind of pregnancy, etc. I delayed that, and I summer last year, so summer 2021, I think I picked up the phone to Lynn and said, I was trying to access some of the online training. I wanted to go over some of my prac stuff. And so I picked up the phone to Lynn and said, "I've forgotten my password. Can you get me back in the system?" And of course, Lynn swung into action, and she was, and we started chatting about doing coach. So we got that booked in, and she said, "And did you say you wanted to do masters?" I'm like, "Well, now that you mention it, yes, actually." And I think, being part of your community and the hub for your students, I'd been seeing and hearing and getting the feel for all the success that people were having gone on and done more. And I wanted my own slice of that as well. So I did coach 12 months ago, this time last year, I think. And that started to be about me. So that's where I started absorbing it. for me, and kind of my mindset and how I wanted my life to be. And then masters at the beginning of this year. And it was masters for me that had the biggest impact, most definitely, because I started to understand what all the things were with my mindset that were holding me back, and not just understand them, actually change them. So by the time we'd finished, they were gone, which was just phenomenal. So the getting in front of the camera, I started to address that. Masters now, it's like somebody says to me, okay, come and do a video with me. I'm like, fine, okay. What do you want to think about it? Do you want to practice it? Just get me in front of the camera. It's fine. No problem at all. I'm about to do my third professional photo shoot of the year, with Gemma, who's a brilliant photographer. But that would never have happened before. So all of that is gone, and I was thinking about this, preparing to talk to you about this. I don't even think I have those moments of what if, or if you do that, what's going to happen? Because as soon as they start creeping in, it's like something else kicks in that goes, just shut up and get on with it. It's I just don't have that anymore, and it's really different, but it's fantastic. It's really great.
I know, and the reason I'm laughing, for those of you listening to this on the podcast, is because obviously I've known Sian for just over 3 years now. And when I went out into our community, so Sian's mentioned the hub, so we have an online community where we all hang out as a community online. And I put a message out into the hub and saying, I'm going to do series 6 of the podcast. If anybody would like to come and appear on the podcast, give me a shout, let me know, because I love interviewing my own students. And Sian was straight in there saying, yeah, I'll do it. And I remember chuckling to myself when I got your message, thinking the Sian I knew 3 years ago would not have put her hand up, would probably, and if I'd asked you, you would have got stressed about it and overthought everything.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And here we are, like, chatting away on a podcast, live streaming to the world, and shortly, going on a podcast with, I don't know, 40,000 downloads, whatever it is we've got. And you're a cool cookie. And that is just because the programming in your mind is just so different now. I think people...
Yeah.
If we go back to our days in HR, because obviously we both started off back in HR, when you think about some of the struggles that we had and some of the ways that we might have both tripped ourselves up, obviously we have our own unique baggage, but you just sit there and think, oh my goodness, how much easier would that career have been if I hadn't been running these internal programs? And then, like you say, you go on masters and you go, I'll be honest, right? I was a little bit disappointed at times, because I sat there and went, is that all you have to do to change it? And then my trainer goes, yeah, pretty much. That's all you need to do. And you're like, all these people are raving about the results they've got, and that's all they did. It's phenomenal, isn't it?
I remember messaging you when I was doing my pre-course study for masters and going, why on earth don't they roll this out? This should be part of the professional standards for all HR people, because the difference it would make if everybody, not necessarily masters, just some of the prac and the coach tools. Masters, phenomenal. But if we had, as a profession, if HR had that, the difference it would make in terms of their own mindset and how they approach things, but also how they can support people as well within businesses, it would be phenomenal.
So tell me a bit about then. So you went through, obviously, our transformational masters program. So when we talk about the differences that made to your business, what are some of the things that you can kind of, relate back into your business, the difference it's made for your clients and the difference it's made for you?
So for my clients, what it's really switched me on to is recognizing some of those unhelpful thought patterns, and the unconscious processes that they're running. So I think it would be fair to say that in some shape or form, a lot of the people that come to work with me have I can't look good in my clothes, or I don't look good in my clothes, I'm too big, I don't deserve to look good and feel good. I just want to hide and blend in because that's easy. I'm not worth nice clothes. That's something, the number of people that come to me and actually start apologizing because they buy stuff from the supermarket. I'm like, at no point when you walk through my door, you do not have to apologize to me for anything. It's not about that. It's helping them to understand that they are worth more than that, that they are worth and deserve to look and feel good. And that's what it's about. And I think having some of that lived experience as well. So, you know, like I said, I came to this myself as a client because I'd lost the weight. I put it back on over a period of time, but you know, I'm not as light or small as I was, and it doesn't bother me in the same way because I've got this knowledge now, and that's what I want to share with people. That's really my passion. That's my purpose for having decided to become a personal stylist. It's to help people feel good, no matter what their shape or size. And I think what NLP has given me in doing masters is that real appreciation of I can spot those patterns in other people now. So I can spot, you don't have to tell me that you don't think that you're worthy of looking good in your clothes. I can spot it through what you're saying. And that has been really significant, because that then means that although I'm not coaching with my NLP toolkit, but there are lots of tools in that toolkit that I can use without actually coaching for my style clients. So challenging their thinking patterns, using language to challenge how they're thinking and how they're kind of creating that narrative. That's one really key thing. Reframing that as well, helping to reframe how they see themselves, how they feel about themselves, and and then we add in the clothes. The clothes are kind of the tool, the vehicle that gets you to looking and feeling good, but you've got to do that mindset stuff as well. I can recognize the strategies, and we were laughing about this earlier, but the number of times I hear I hate clothes shopping. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm nodding vigorously for those of you listening to the podcast. That was me.
Yeah. And you know what? I think probably one of the biggest buzzes that I have got since I've been doing this is the message from you going, I actually went shopping and I quite enjoyed myself. And I'm like, my gosh, the shift in you from, I hate shopping, I remember when we did our first shopping trip together, and you were like, you're going to spend 5 hours with me in Cardiff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to give you a nice lunch, and it's going to be fine. And it was, and I think you enjoyed that trip.
I did.
But every time you do a bit of shopping, or it's great. I bet. I love the messages and the photos that you send, and that all my clients send me, because we shift that view of shopping is this bad thing. Shopping can't possibly be nice and enjoyable, and I'm not going to find anything that I look and feel good in. And actually,
and you're absolutely right. I remember talking to you. When I first started talking to you about doing some stuff around my personal style, because I kind of had to come to the realization that, I needed to improve my personal brand. I needed to, relook at what I was wearing. And, me and my story of weight is a very long one, all the way back to my childhood. I know exactly where it came from. And over the years, I've lost weight, gained weight, lost weight, gain. A lot like a number of, I know your other clients have. And so shopping is, or I say used to be, something I hated. I would avoid it like the plague, and I would pick up a pair of leggings when I was in Sainsbury's, or I'd see, a top in Marks, oh, that'll do. And it was very much that'll do. I have to wear clothes. I have to look smart. As you know, I'd got myself into the habit of wearing the same style dress for work every single time. And clothes is not something I ever would say I enjoyed. I would never look forward to it. I would begrudgingly do it. And I remember saying to you, do you realize what you're taking me on if you take me on as a client? You should, you're up for this, because if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't be up for it, right? You've got a really hard job here, and every single step of the way you made it easy. You know, I remember that first shopping trip, and I remember driving to Cardiff to see you thinking, okay, just do as she says, just try everything on, just put a smile on your face, and it will all be over in 5 hours. And I'm going to have lunch in the middle, always a nice way to bribe me. You know, I've lunch in the middle, and it's just 5 hours, or it's just 5 hours. You can do this. And then we went into the first shop, and the planning that you had put into that shopping trip. And you literally just took me in and went, right, in this shop, we're going here, 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 hold this, right, change your room, let's go. You know, and it was just seamless, you know. And I hated shopping, absolutely hated it with a passion. And then I'll never forget that very first shopping trip. And some of those clothes that you know, we'd ordered online, because of course you do online stuff as well as in person, and all of that. And I remember trying them on going, actually, I feel glamorous. I haven't felt glamorous in years. Now, you know, I'd done all the mindset stuff, right? So for me, it wasn't mindset. Like, I loved myself. I believed I was worth it. It was all of those things. But I didn't feel feminine. I didn't feel glamorous. I didn't feel like someone would want to look at me. And I remember telling you the story the first day when I wore that biker jacket, and I was parked at the traffic lights, and I happened to catch a guy in the car next to me looking at me in the car, and I was like, that's the first time I've caught a guy looking at me like that in a very long time. And all of a sudden, I felt like a woman. I felt glamorous. I felt amazing, because you taught me so much. Honestly, the journey is phenomenal. You know, the knowledge that you share is amazing. And all of a sudden I was like, actually, I am learning, you know, it's a learning process. I'm learning what colors to wear. I'm learning what style to wear. I'm learning what clothes, what jewelry, what shoes. I mean, I'll be honest, I realized now how ignorant I was about how to dress properly, you know. But I don't feel bad about that, because I did the best I could, you know. NLP presupposition, do the best with the resources that you have. You know, and to take me from that in 6 months to me bombarding you with messages going, I've just seen a new necklace. Can I have this? But does this work for my style? Can you give me some advice? You know, and it's almost like, you know, I said to you earlier, my bank, you know, my credit card's taken a beating again recently, because we've just done another round of shopping. You know, but I love it, and I don't begrudge it, and I feel amazing. And I open up my wardrobe and I go, I'm actually excited to look at what's in here. Whereas before, not at all, you know. So I can't, you know, wax lyrical enough about your talent and your skill, particularly as a plus size lady myself. You know, it's just phenomenal. And I'm just thinking, like, that just, you know, if you compare that to the buzz you get out of your HR job that you used to have, I guess it doesn't even compare.
No. And lockdown was an interesting period, because there was some stuff that I could still do online with people, but obviously, I mean, you know, best results face to face. And certainly when we're looking at colours, I don't use an online process, because you just cannot get an accurate reading. So that has to be done in person. So lockdown had an impact on how much I was actually able to do. And I remember getting back into the studio for the first client to do their colour analysis when things had started opening up. And I got to the end of the session and I was on a real high. You know, it just made me realise just how much I really love doing this. And I think, yeah, it is, you know, I think now I have one of the best toolkits going, because I've got my personal style toolkit and I've got a huge amount of stuff in there that I tailor for everybody. You know, it's not a cookie cutter approach. And I think that was the term that you used. It's not a cookie cutter approach. I tailor it for everybody. But I've got the NLP toolkit as well. So you're great, because, you know, you obviously know the NLP stuff. And I just said to you, you know, when I'm in the training room and you say, just follow the script, I turned that around and I just said, you know, following the script, well, basically that's do what you're told. So we had that laugh on that first shopping trip, and I said, just trust me. Trust me, like, you know, I would trust you in the training room with NLP. Trust me, I will guide you through this process, but just, you know, go with it. And I think that is the thing. It's, you know, the way that I use my NLP toolkit, and I'm always developing that. So I'm always thinking about, okay, so what else can I take from NLP that I can really build into my style services and the way that I work with my clients? And that comes down to my marketing as well. The way I post on social media, the way that I think about who I'm talking to and what I want them to know and how I get that message across. It all just kind of comes together really nicely into that, well, this is me. So where I was talking about that mindset block earlier of I've got to do it this way, and that never felt, actually I do it my way now, and that's the best way. That's what's going to get me the right people coming through to work with, because it's, you know, when I first started out, and people would say to me, "Well, who do you work with?" I used to say, not knowing, I used to say, "Well, pretty much anybody that wears clothes." But and yes, that's true. If you wear clothes, there is a way that I can help you. But different people have different views of how they feel in their clothes, how they feel about their bodies, um, and some people genuinely feel, they feel good. They're happy with how they're doing it, and that's absolutely fine. Um, It's people like you and me who didn't used to feel that way, but absolutely deserve to. That's who I'm talking to. And NLP has really helped me hone that and get really clear on that as well.
I know one of the things that you talk a lot about, and I talk a lot about in terms of masters and master practice, is this conversational change piece. Because I think
Mhm.
a lot of people, when they're looking at NLP, look at the techniques, right? And we're sport for choice, let's be honest. There are so many
Yeah.
actual coaching techniques which you could use. And a lot of the more, I say pure coaches, if you like, in our community would use those techniques to help people. But actually, there is just as much value in having a well-placed conversation. And sometimes that can be just reflecting back what someone has said. With a tonation, like, Laura, you hate shopping? No, actually, I don't anymore.
Mhm.
And reflecting
Yeah.
back, knowing that 98% of language is unconscious. So I know you use that because you've done that with me, and reflected back what I've said and gone, actually, no, that isn't what I meant. Actually, that's the old language. That's the old pattern. Actually, that's not where I'm at now. And reframing it, like you mentioned, is massive. But I think that, so technique wise, there's tons of stuff. But there is this piece of being able to really understand where your client's coming from and having almost a lens through which to look at that, like, for example, the profiling tools that we use around meta programs.
Yeah.
But also,
Mhm.
and just understand, well, this person's an internal processor. So actually they're trying on clothes, and I'm not going to interject and tell them what I think. I'm just going to leave the silence for 5 or 10 seconds, let them think, then they'll talk to me. Or
Yeah.
an external process like me that, and I know you worry when I don't talk because I'm an external process. You're
Yeah.
like, Laura, tell me, what are
Mhm.
you thinking? Come on, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because you know how to manage me as a client. That's nothing to do with coaching. That's about how
Mm.
to get the best out of the people that you're helping, because you have that lens now to look at things through. And it's, I guess, I don't know about you, but I think it gets to the point where when you've done masters and it's such an in-depth program
Mhm.
that by the time you finished, it's all unconscious. Like, you don't consciously sit there and
Yeah.
think, so is Laura an internal or an external processor? Is she a perceiver or is she a judger? Like all of those things.
Yeah.
By the way, they're two different meta programs. I think you just start to unconsciously build a picture. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't ever sit down consciously and think about a client and go, right, which are they? Are they internal or external or anything like that? It becomes intuitive, and I think that's what we learn on masters as well. And that's one of the things, that's one of my Laura phrases in my head, is trust your intuition. Um and going through masters actually really does kind of hammer that home, and I am much more, I notice when I stop and give myself time to do that, I notice that I trust my intuition a lot more. than I ever used to. And that makes a huge difference. But yeah, picking that up with clients, seeing what's going on with them. Absolutely. I've got some clients like you in the changing room. If you're not talking to me straight away, even when you're sending me photos and we do it online, and you send me the photo and there's no comment with it, and I'm going, right, come on, Laura, what are you thinking? What do you think? I'm not, because I know. Whereas other people do need that time they need to stand in front of the mirror, and they need to turn this way and that way, and they need to really, kind of internally process it before they talk. So they get the kind of the thinking space to do that. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic, there are a lot of techniques within NLP and they're all fantastic, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily a technique that is just as valuable. So understanding language patterns, understanding how to reframe, picking up on the nuances of what somebody's saying to you, just so valuable. And that's everyday conversation, that you can use that just whatever you're doing.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think that's the thing I think a lot of people say about masters. I think people think, I'm not doing masters because I don't want to be a coach. And that couldn't be further from the truth. If you want to be a coach, of course, it'll help you be a great coach. But actually, as a business owner, in any business, it has huge value to offer because, as you say, business is all about people, and people is all about effective communication. And so you can take all of this, like you've taken it into a personal styling business. We have another one of our master practitioners who's a property developer, and he's taken it into his property development business. He told me point blank, Laura, I'll never be a coach, I'll never be a mentor, not interested in that. But he uses the language stuff all day, every day. Like you say, even down to how you craft a social media post, being aware of things like rep systems and the way that you convey yourself, all the way through to, writing sales blurb, for websites.
My God, that used to take me days. If I was going to write, what is this service that I'm offering, that would take me days, if not weeks, to get something that I was happy with. And even then, I don't, looking back now, I don't think it was particularly good. It's like I can do it in less than an hour now, probably. I mean, yes, I'll go back and refine it, but I can get the key stuff out of my head and down because I really understand those things. And I think if I think back to masters for me, I'm not saying I won't ever use the techniques in a coaching scenario, but it's not in my roadmap at the moment. But the language stuff, but I just think about me. So even if I wasn't taking it and using it in my business, the fundamental difference that, because we have a 2-day breakthrough, it done in a day, which is very, very intense. But at the end of the first week, we did the board break. I smashed my hand through a board of wood, and I was like so up for that. We got to that last day on the first week, and it's like, who's going first? Well, me, no holding me back. I'm ready. I'm pumped. I understand the process that I'm using, and I just wanted to. And my hands went straight through. So that, and then the breakthrough on the second week, it's just the change it has made in terms of my mindset and my thinking and the way that I approach things, is just phenomenal. So if anybody's thinking about doing masters and thinking, oh, but I don't want to be a coach, or I'll never use it, just the value, and I said at the start about the investment in me and my development, that is probably the best investment. No, it is the best investment I have ever made in myself, and it probably will be the best investment I ever make in myself. So yeah, I would say definitely, if you're thinking about masters, do it. Definitely.
Thank you so much. And I'm conscious of time. And as always with this podcast, I overrun massively because I get so engrossed in the conversation. And it's just been so wonderful to hear your story and to start off series 6 with an episode which isn't necessarily about running a coaching business, which is what I'm known for. It's sharing with everybody the benefit to us as individuals in our lives and the quality of our lives, and how we can use it in so many businesses. And I'm with you with your comment earlier about, I think all HR professionals, in fact, all professionals should do NLP training, because it's all about communication. And if you can start to hear in a new way, if you can start to work with people in a new way, lead in a new way, build relationships in a new way, it really does make us unstoppable. So thank you so much for sharing your story and being so open with everyone about the differences it's made for you in your journey. I just want to ask you a few quick fire questions. Now, this is completely off the cuff. Sian is not prepared for this at all. If you listen to the podcast, you'll know I like to fire a few pacey questions to my guests at the end. So, Sian, are you ready?
Go on then.
Okay, good. So, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one pearl of advice, what would you say?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
What's one of, I'm sure you've got many, but what's one of your favorite quotes?
Now I'm having a mind blank.
This is the problem, right? You get put under pressure by Laura, and then it's like,
nobody puts baby in the corner.
Oh, love it. Love it. What a great film. What a great film. What a great film. If you could sum up your experience with us here at Unleash Your Potential doing your NLP training, if you could sum it up in just 1 or 2 words, what would you use?
Can I use 3?
Go on.
Unleash your potential.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's the reason why I called the business Unleash Your Potential.
It was a very good name.
Oh, brilliant. Sian, thank you so much for your time, because I know you're a super busy woman, juggling lots of different hats and things. And I really, really appreciate your time. And I know the listeners of the podcast all the way around the world are going to love hearing your story. If they want to get in touch with you, Sian, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Okay, so they can follow me on Facebook and Instagram with the handle @Sian Fisher Stylist, or they can email me directly, sian.fisher@houseofcolour.co.uk. And that's colour with a U in it if you're watching or listening internationally.
Amazing. And actually, Shane, lovely to see you checking in from Texas. So thank you so much for checking in. You are most certainly an insider as we're recording this live. So thank you so much for joining us. So amazing. Sian, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your story.
You are very welcome.
With us all. So as you know, folks, this is episode 1 of series 6. I can't even believe I'm saying that. So next up on the live stream, recording an episode next week with me, will be the lovely Phil Hanlon. He is a massive Tony Robbins fan and has done a huge amount of personal development over the years, and then came to do some NLP training with me, and he's going to be sharing with you the difference that it has made for him. If it's the first time that you have seen the podcast or listened to the podcast, then please feel free to subscribe on your platform of choice. So whether you're watching this live on YouTube or indeed any of the other podcast platforms, then do subscribe, because we're getting back into regularly releasing episodes. I've got so many guests. We're going to be doing it weekly for a while. So we're going to be doing it more quickly than we have done in the previous episodes, but that's because I've got too many guests and I want to interview them all. If you haven't left me a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, I'd really appreciate it if you would, because it really helps share the word about just how valuable this podcast is to everybody. And I just want to say thank you for listening, because I really appreciate you hanging out with us. And as I said, I probably need 45,000 downloads now. all the way around the world. We have listeners internationally and globally. So big love to all of you. Thank you for tuning in. And stay safe, look after yourselves. In fact, I don't have to say stay safe anymore, do we? Now we're out of the whole COVID thing. But anyway, look after yourselves, take great care of you, and I'll see you on the next episode.